Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited for today's interview. I'm interviewing fellow urban fantasy author Jon Ford. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you very much. Rushed off my feet today. It's been like a real rushed out day, but we're here and we're doing the interview now, so it's all good. I'm excited.
And I want to bring up as well, prior to us obviously starting this, I had pointed out the beautiful poster on the background, and I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to that. Can you tell us about that again?
Yeah, so we talked about this. I got in very early on Twitter. When I was sort of spreading my wings on Twitter, when I first got into Twitter, I started to interface with the writing community, but I also started to interface with the artist community as well, simply because I really wanted cover art for my books. So I thought there's going to be artists here on Twitter that can do it. So I fell in love with the art of a girl called Celeste. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's SYLASSAE, I think, Celeste. But she's really good. She Twitch streams her art, and I've loved her stuff for a long time. And we got talking, but her stuff's quite expensive. I mean, it's nice, it's worth what you pay for it, but it is really good. And I was like, I wish I could get one of those done. So Nikki Twisted, who's my editor on the Hunters and the Songbird series, Celeste, who I'd become friends with, they got together and they sent me that as a gift, which is again, it's a complete surprise, which blew me away. And then the wording underneath, where it says Nightingale, I don't know if you can see that was done by my wife. She got me the wooden nameplates put underneath it with the swirly writing on it. So yeah, pride of place in my office.
And we're going to talk about soon. I do want to talk about your book covers and Jess as well, because she's an important part of your business as well.
Yeah.
I want to start from the start first, though. Why did you start writing and decide to publish?
I've always enjoyed writing. It's one of those things I always used to just do as like a little hobby on the side. I just write like short stories and things, and it had always just been a hobby ever since I was in my teens. Just like writing was just always something I did, but never really thought too seriously about it. And then, as I say, me and my wife, we met like online gaming. We were playing a game called City of Heroes, which was one of these massively multiplayer online role-playing games where you're basically a superhero and you create a superhero character and you fly through the city fighting crime. And we met playing that. And as part of that, I used to be part of what they like clans in that group. So I used to be part of a super group, and I started writing fan fiction for that super group's website, just like superhero fan fiction based around the characters from and it spawned off into something huge. I used to write an odd chapter here and an odd chapter there, and then one of the guys we'd play with would come and say, can you write in your next chapter, your next little story, can you put my character in there? And I was like, yeah, we could do that. So before I knew it, I think there was something like about 96 chapters of this thing on a website just one day. So it's really, really good. It's just fun and really good, this little superhero story. And I was like, I can't get it published because it's fan fiction. It's based around a property that exists. But that started me thinking about the whole process of writing, actually doing something seriously with it. So I took some of the characters from that game. That's where Songbird was born. I took some of the characters from the game and sort of thought, how can I use the characters that I've created, but use them in a setting that isn't trademarked and copyrighted by another company? So that's where the Songbird world came into being. It's like those characters were lifted. Well, the intention was to lift those characters and move them to like a different universe and play with them there. But in the process, the characters got changed altogether. Like Gail Knightley, who's my main character, the Nightingale, in the original superhero books, she was like very Keira Knightley-esque. She was very prim British, like slender, tall, very professional, but very shy. Whereas in the new books, in the Songbird book, she's the total opposite of that. She's still British, but she swears like a trooper, and she's very, very firm in what she wants to do. She's a leader. She's a soldier, basically. So that everything sort of got flipped on its head a little bit, which was quite nice actually to start have these characters express them in a different way. So yeah, it's been really fun. That's where it all started, and that's where it got to.
So how did you actually go with the publishing process? And again, because I know a lot of people, especially like indie publishing for the first book, we make a lot of mistakes and we learn from them. So how did you tackle your publishing your first book?
The first book in the Songbird series, Hunters, came out in March this year, just gone March 20. We're in 21, aren't we? March 21. So God, the pandemic seems like it's been like going on for such a long time. I've lost track of the years, let alone anything else. March 21 Hunters came out, but actually Hunters was probably written about 5 years ago. But it took a long time, because when I first wrote it, I had no clue what I was doing, just no clue. And you write and you write and you write. And before I knew it, I'd got what I thought was like a first draft that was in a fairly good state. Wasn't. It was terrible. First draft came in at 256,000 words. And I had no clue what that meant until I started Googling it. And then you start Googling it. You start Googling things like how many words is in Harry Potter? And it comes up saying 74,000 or something. You're like, oh, okay. Well, mine's like 4 times bigger than that. So what's going on? So then you start Googling how many words in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. It comes back as being 250,000. You think, oh my God, my first draft is as big as Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. It's just nuts. So, and then I ran it past a friend of mine runs like an independent publishing house, and I ran it past them. And he said it needs an edit very badly. He said the bare bones are right. He said the story's good and the bare bones, I like the characters, he said, but it needs an edit. He said it's too big for a start, just way too big. Another friend of mine who is an established author in her own right, and she pushed me towards some edit masterclasses with a friend of hers. And that's really opening to, like, basically it was like you pay for some time and you send the first, so corrects them and tells you where you're making your mistakes. Like, are you using the wrong voice? Are you using a male gaze on female characters? And are you know, those kind of things. There's all these things that come through. And when it came back, it was almost horrifying to see it. And you're like, oh my God, there's so much wrong with this that you just don't realize. She said, I was a kitchen sink thrower. She said, some writers will flesh out a skeleton draft and then flesh it out with description and things like that. She said, what you do is the other way around. She said, you throw everything in the kitchen for this book. And she said, now what you need to do is pare it back down again to where it needs to be. She said, because there's so many places you repeat yourself where you've got too much description or you're using too many words to say something that could be said rather succinctly. So then it started this massive process that went on for about 2 years. When I went looking for other people that could help me, that's when I hooked up with Nikki Twisted on Twitter, and she became my editor and she edited it down the rest of the way with me. We worked in conjunction, and I think it's settled at around 146,000, and I think that's about as lean as it gets now. I don't think there's any more you could cut out of that, and I think Nikki agrees with me. That's where it's settled. I think we got it to that point, and that was where it was. But that whole process probably took about 3 to 3.5 years. It took a long time to get it, to learn the lessons about what I'd done wrong in the first place and get it whittled down to a point where it sort of made more sense and where I was happy with it. And then you go through the beta reading process and things. So there's a lot you have to do before you get it out into the public. And then, of course, there's the whole decision. Do you want to pursue querying or do you want to go the indie route? You know, which of those do you want to do? So that became a real quandary in and of itself. And I decided to go the indie route instead for a couple of reasons. Simply the book was still quite big. And I really thought that if I tried to push it down the querying route to go through the traditional publisher, they'd probably want to cut out some of the characters and cut the book down some more. And I was happy with it where it was. And also I had a vision for like what the covers look like and things like that. And I thought if I go down a route where I go with a traditional publisher, they'll probably want me to change that as well. And I kind of just want it to be what I want it to be, because this for me is more about legacy than it is for anything else. It's about me telling the story and showing it in the way I want it to be shown. So I didn't really want to have the creative interference. Maybe that sounds arrogant, but it's just kind of the way I wanted it. So I decided to go the indie route and do it my way, if that makes sense. And it's panned out so far. It's been really, really good. So
the word I want to use is perseverance in this situation, because especially to be told that it's too big to then cull down about 100,000 words and continuously go through that process. I imagine there would have been many times where you were kind of lost in it, not sure what direction to go. Is it worth it? You know, you would have had a lot of that sort of negative feedback, but to still decide, this is what I want. I love this story. I need to share this story. And you've had amazing feedback and amazing ratings since your release has come out. So it's very much been well received.
Yeah, it's been really well received. I've been really happy with the feedback I've had so far, and it's been so good.
Obviously, with everything that you learned, what would you say that your top tips would be for somebody else who is trying to write urban fantasy? Because it can be a complex genre to write, to do it well, because you're doing story and obviously a new world as well. So to remain consistent with the rules that you apply, what were the greatest lessons you learned while writing your first urban fantasy?
I cheated a little bit, simply because how do I explain? The book that I wanted to write, and the reason it's so big, or the reason the Hunters the Songbird book is so big and Hunters especially so big, because it's very much a multi-character story point of view. So I've got there's probably about 7 or 8 main characters who you get to experience their viewpoints through. And there's loads of like satellite and supplementary characters as well that you go through their viewpoints as well from time to time, where you see them in the story. So it was very much a really big. So it was one of Games of Thrones-esque, I guess. That's kind of what I compare it to. I'm not saying I'm George R.R. Martin by any stretch of imagination, but the same sort of ethos, being lots of different character points of views and lots of different separate storylines, which eventually will all intertwine. That's how they will all come together, because that's the whole purpose of the book. So because I was doing that, like I really enjoyed Game of Thrones, but the part of the thing that throws me on the books is when I started reading the books, I got really confused by which character was which sometimes, because they're kind of all similarly named, and you're trying to learn this new world that you're in as well, this world of Westeros. So I kind of wanted to make it a little bit easier on my readers in that respect. So I kind of set mine in the world as it is today. I didn't create like another planet or another world or another, some sort of made up creation. So it is planet Earth. It's our world as we live in today, with the same countries and the same geography, but changed. So it should be very familiar to the reader, but also it's different. So essentially the premise of the book is that an event happened in 2016 which threw the world upside down. It's like it changed, like geographical boundaries kind of changed, like which countries and stuff like that. So I cheated the system a little bit by actually setting it in where we are now. But you still have to do some world building, and that's where the issue lies. It's like trying to keep the world building straight. You're like, if you set a rule or you set something up, you need to be consistent from chapter to chapter and book to book. So I have a spreadsheet, and it's massive. I call it the spreadsheet of doom, but it's where I track everything. It's like it's literally like hundreds of sheets long, and it's got there's like a sheet per book, there's a sheet per story arc. So all the characters have their own sheet detailing what their story arcs are going to be from start to finish. And I needed that simply to keep myself straight, because when you start writing it, you're sort of like, it's really hard from chapter to chapter to manage your continuity to make sure everything's correct. And even now, even now, maybe people will read it and go, oh, this doesn't make sense, John. There's something out of continuity here. But I have tried as hard as I can to keep it straight, but I found that I needed that. So I think, as if I'm writing urban fantasy like that, I think especially if you're building a world that's going to be, and I guess it applies to any fantasy really, you're building a world and you're setting that world up from scratch, and the rules that you want to apply to that world, you need to track them somehow. And that's what I created this spreadsheet for. I don't think I could possibly have just written this by the seat of my pants and just gone, that's just what it is. And you look at books like the Harry Potter series and like George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, or Song of Ice and Fire, and you think he must have done the same thing. He must have all this lore and all these timelines and all these character arcs and everything must be written down somewhere in Independence for him to keep it all straight, because I can't think of any other way to do it. It was becoming a nightmare for me to try and keep straight, and I was only on book 1, and my mind's relatively simple in comparison, I think. But I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from it, was I didn't realize the amount of work it was going to take me, not just to write the story, but also keep the story straight from book to book. So that was the biggest thing. I say with the urban fantasy thing is just making sure that whatever law you establish and whatever continuity you establish, you've got to stick to it, and you've got to track it somehow. And especially if you're doing a long series of books like I am, it's going to be, you've got to find a way to track that in a way that's going to help you. And that was the biggest takeaway, I think, for writing urban fantasy, or any fantasy, I guess, as I said.
You interview authors yourself and put it on your website. Can you tell me what made you decide to start doing that?
From a purely selfish point of view, I needed website content. But no, it's really interesting, because I think, as I said a minute ago, when you write urban fantasy like I have, and you've got this spreadsheet where you track everything to the nth degree, and because I'm a plotter by nature, I like to know what my characters' motivations and things are as I'm writing. And because I like to do that for my books, I really like to know how it works for other people. Like when I've read a book by somebody else, it's like a part of me that thinks, why did that character do that? Or what made the writer write that character in that way, or things like that. So I started doing just author interviews, which were just sort of like, how did you get into writing? How did you do this? Blah, blah, blah. And I thought, there's a lot of people doing those on their website. So I thought, okay, a different thing to do then is, as I read books by authors, is for me to do what I call an indie deep dive. So they're really spoilerific interviews. So basically, I might have a little bit at the top that says, how did you get into writing, and so on and so forth. But then after that, I start to really dig into the book itself, because I've read the book, and as I've been reading through the book, I note questions down that I want to ask. So like, why did this character do this, or how did you come up with this backstory, or what, you know, etc., etc. And because those are the questions that interest me. So it's heavily spoilerific, but if you've read the book, or you're interested in the book and you want to read the book and then come back to my interview, it will give you some real behind the scenes knowledge of how that book was written. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. I thought it just makes it a little bit different, a little bit unique in some respects, that I can just do these indie deep dives where I've got access to these indie authors, because I've befriended a lot of them on Twitter, and you have this opportunity to go and deep dive into how the book was written. And that's been really interesting to me. And not only from the fact that it's just interesting, but it's also educational to me. Like, to sometimes ask a question like, how did you come up with this character? And this character does this, but why did you write it like that? Or what led you to that inspirational moment that did that? And they'll tell you an answer, or they'll tell you the story behind it. And you learn from that sometimes. You go, oh, that's a really, really neat way of looking at it, or a really good idea. And then I find that informs my writing in turn. Like, there's been moments definitely in book 2 of the series, and there's definitely moments in book 3, which I'm writing now, which have been directly influenced by some of the indie deep dives I've done, where I've spoken to them about the characters that they've written and why they did certain things. And then it makes you think, that's a really good idea. I really like that. And I'm not copying their idea, but it gives you a different way of thinking about something. And you sometimes just think, I really need to think about that more closely in my book going forward. One of the key things is like representation. Because I have, in Hunters, I have a gay character and a bisexual character. Bless you. And then in book 2, there's going to be a trans character as well. And I was wondering how I was going to handle those characters. So I ended up talking to a couple of other authors who handled similar subject matter in their books to try and get a handle on how to approach it in the best way. And their advice was brilliant, was really great. It was really, really good to go for. And it gave me confidence to write that stuff myself. And then I wanted, like, a gimmick's not quite the right word, but I wanted it to be unique in some respects. And as I had the opportunity to do it, it was really good. I've got your book as well, so you'll be one coming your way at some point when I've read your book.
That makes me nervous. It is. Well, I need to leave. You raised such a good point too, though, as well, because connecting with fellow authors in an intimate way, like such as this, as we're having an interview now, you do learn a lot. And I can say hands down, I've been doing this for almost 2 years, a year and a half, and I have learned something from every single person that I've learned. And I have taken so much value. I built amazing relationships through that. And it really does give you a matter of perspective as well. And as you said, it's not necessarily stealing ideas, but it's concepts, it's pace, it's how they formulate the structure, and you go, actually, that does make sense. And you just absorb that, because that's what we're here for. We're all creative minds building these amazing worlds. And I think it's really amazing that you've done that on your website as well, and it gives you content. So speaking of learning then, this is the one that everyone tries to avoid. I want to talk a little bit on marketing. And I know that, I know everyone hates it, but like, please no. And I know that Jess, your wife, helps you massively. You're a power team, and I absolutely love it and live for it. How have you handled and found going into the marketing aspect of it? Because I think very quickly, especially authors who have just published their first book, realizes how much effort equally has to go into it. It's not just writing the book. How have you guys handled it?
You're right. That's the bit that nobody teaches you up front. It's the bit when you start writing a book, you think that the difficult bit is writing the book. It's like getting that book written is the difficult bit. And I've spoken to friends who are writing books as well, and they say, I'm never going to get this book done. And I'm always like, writing the book's the easy bit. Honestly, when getting the writing book, you're good. All it requires to write a book is perseverance. It's like, you just got to, like, if you've got a story to tell, keep writing that story down and keep honing it, and eventually you'll get it published. Even if you have to do it yourself, that's fine. There's no shame in indie publishing. The difficult bit comes after that. It's when you want to get that book out there and you want to make people see that book and read that book to make it known, because that's the bit that it's so difficult to do. It's like, and that's the bit I was all at sea, that the marketing aspect is just really difficult, and it's not something that anybody ever prepares you for. I think from my point of view, when I started doing this, it was all about Twitter, And I thought, I'm going to get a big Twitter following. That must be the key to this, is you get thousands of followers on Twitter and then thousands of people just buy your book and it'll all be fine. That's not how it works. It's like, you cannot, like, I've got 10,000 followers or whatever it is, which is peanuts compared to some other people, but that doesn't necessarily lead to you selling your book, because a lot of it's like follow for follow, and you're following other authors just to boost your numbers up so it looks good. So then you think, where's this going to come from? So there's the aspect of then trying like your Amazon ads and your Facebook ads and your BookBub ads and stuff like that, but there's like a secret formula, and it's like really hard to hit upon it to try and get it so you get some traction. And it comes down to like experimentation a lot of the time, just to try and see what works and what doesn't work. Try different type of adverts or different words or different keywords until you hit that magic formula that seems to start selling you something. But it's really hard to, I've asked a lot of people, like, how do you do it? How do you get the traction you need? And you just never get an answer, or not one that works for you. So it's just a case of just persevering and just promote. And, I'm very conscious like that I send out regular tweets with advertising hunters, but I also don't want to spam my feed that's going to just put people off. So, and like you say, with Jess, my wife, we decided to start up the Instagram account. I've always had like a Jon Ford Instagram account, which is my personal one, but then Jess said, we need like a professional one, like a Jon Ford author one. So we said, yeah, we'll do that. So we set it up, but I am hopeless at that sort of social media. But Jess has been really good. So she runs the Instagram account more or less for me. And we have like, there's an aesthetic on there. So currently it's got like everything you see on there's like a red backdrop, because the first book has a red theme. And then because there's 7 books in my series, the second one will have an orange theme and so on and so forth, because they're going to be rainbow themed as you go through. So when the second book comes out, the aesthetic on my Instagram will change to be orange. And Jess, she reads a lot, whereas I write a lot. Jess reads a lot as well, so she's really into the bookstagramming. So she puts out like a book a day almost, and we try and promote some other indie authors and things. So just to keep the promotion ticking over, and it seems to work. I mean, I'm not selling like Stephen King numbers, but I'm selling here and there. And I'm happy with what I never expected to be a millionaire, but I'm happy with the way sales are going. I've had a lot of advice that once you've got more of your series out there, things will get a little easier. So once you've got more books out there, it starts to snowball a little bit. So I'm hoping that's the case. So hopefully when book 2 comes out, I'm hopefully getting book 2 out in October probably now, because it slipped a little bit. And then I've got another book coming out hopefully by Christmas. So there should be 3 books out by the end of the year. 2 in the Songbird series and 1 in a totally different series, which I'm doing. So hopefully that will help as well when I've got more to promote in that sense. But yeah, it's hard. The marketing is hard. The promotion is, but as I say, you just keep chipping away at it. It's just a perseverance thing, and trying out the advertising, the Amazon ads and the Facebook ads, but also trying not to spend a fortune on it. I mean, you could throw money at it senselessly, but you'll just get nowhere and spend a lot of money you can't really afford to spend. So it's just a case of trying to invest wisely in that. I don't know what else to say, really. I'm still on that learning curve myself, and if anybody's got any advice sent my way, I'm quite happy to accept it. But that's been the toughest bit, and the bit nobody teaches you beforehand. But I mean, I've heard that even if you were to go the traditional route of publishing, that the marketing will catch you out there as well, because even if you get, unless you're a big name like a J.K. Rowling or a George R.R. Martin or a Stephen King, you're probably not going to get a massive amount of promotion through the company you go with anyway, so you end up with a lot of it in your own terms. But yeah, that has been the biggest thing. Do you find that as well, or?
So with traditional publishing, this is from what I've gathered, so I could be wrong, nobody hate on me. With traditionally publishing, a lot of their marketing will go prior to it actually being released. Obviously they're staying, etc. But after that, a lot of the marketing is on yourself, because they want to make sure that you're doing the sales. Then they might do like a little bit more, but that's basically it. So all the marketing and that, like if you really want to thrive, even as a traditional publisher, you really need to still be hands-on. I do agree with you in the sense that it will get a lot easier for your marketing when you do have follow-through books, because obviously that's a continuation. They're going to buy your first book, which you've now made a profit on from your ad, but then they've got a second book. So that's pure profit right there. So it does link through that way. And I think especially where you've just taken me back to when I first was publishing, because I knew nothing. I published and thought I'd be a millionaire by the next day. I didn't understand. With that said, I was also very young, so I had no business sense. And you've just discovered all these different things about writing a book and publishing it, and so you're not ready or prepared for the next step, which is on a different level, very intimately knowing what your book is about, because it's a whole completely different. You can be like, this is what my book's about. Cool, it's fluffy, it's great. But then having a sharp being like, these are the authors that I compare it to. This is my target audience. Because a lot of authors, I want to say, are kind of not sure where they're sitting on the shelf. They don't know who to compare. They don't yet have the confidence to be able to compare themselves to those authors. So it's actually, I found feedback from readers, and I would say, who would you compare this to? What style would you say this is similar to? And that feedback enabled me to realize roughly where I was on the shelf, because I had no idea. My first book I knew was young adult. That was about it. So I found receiving that feedback was really, really good, because when I started doing my Facebook ads and when I started doing my AMS ads, I wasn't able to target particular authors. Same thing with when you're looking at, like, on Amazon, you place what categories and what keywords you're going to be in. Obviously, there's a lot in that as well, when it comes to like niche targeting, etc., and your competition rates. But you also need to have a look at who's coming up as readers also purchased authors similar to, because I started targeting those authors, and then I would keep a close eye on seeing who was actually clicking, whether there was similarity between that author if I hadn't yet actually read their book myself. So it is a lot of trial and error, unfortunately, and you do need to know your book a little bit more. And it's copywriting when it comes to ads. Copywriting is completely different to writing, creative writing. You know, to have a sharp, small pitch that you can say basically in these, 2 sentences, this is what's going to make you want to read my book. That's very difficult. We're not trained for that.
No, it's incredibly difficult, and especially for a book like Hunters. That was really my that was probably the most difficult thing, was coming up with like the elevator pitch for the book, because it's like how do you condense what this story down into 2 lines, especially when I've got multiple character arcs. It's like there's so many, like essentially Hunters has got probably 4, maybe 5 different story arcs going on in it, which is incredibly complicated. I've tried to make it nice and easy for people to follow. Like each chapter is quite short. So there's a lot of chapters in the book, but they're all quite short. They're all headed with the character name and the date and the time, or the time and the place that it's in, so you can follow it. Because I knew that otherwise people would just get lost. But the fact that it's like 5 different arcs makes it really difficult for you to just describe what it is in 2 lines. So I've been through loads of different, like, of the pitches that you put onto the ads and stuff, the copy, just to try different things, see what works, and see where you get to. But you're right, that is the toughest bit to try and sort out.
This is my favorite question to ask. What is the goal for you? What is the dream that you're chasing for your writing career?
I wanted something. It's never been about the money for me. I think it's never been, because I'm lucky enough to where I work a day job, so that's not been point. It would be nice to, don't get me wrong, I'd love to make a fortune off it. It'd be great if I was the next Stephen King or whatever and made a small fortune, but that's not what's going to, I was realistic enough to know that's not going to happen. So, but for me, the primary goal when I started was just to prove that I could do it, right? Just to say, because once I got the idea in my head, once you start coming with the idea of, okay, I'm writing these stories, let's see if I can do something with these. Let's see if I can actually get them published. And I remember with Jess, we were in Waterstones, the bookstore here in the UK. I don't know if you have Waterstones in Australia, but over here we have bookstores called Waterstones. They're like Barnes and Nobles, those kind of big bookstores. And I remember walking in there one day, and I was looking in the science fiction and fantasy section. I was looking under the F, and I thought, I'd love to see my book in here someday, on that shelf between these books. And I remember, like, I think it was on my Facebook page years ago, I actually put a snapshot of that shelf with a circle around and an arrow saying, this is where my book would be if it was in a bookshelf. And this is the aim. This is the aim, is to get it done. But then when you go down that path and you start learning about the differences between traditional publishing and indie publishing, and then I decided I wanted to go the indie route. At that point, I thought, well, it's unlikely that it's going to get into a bookshop in that sense, but I still just want to be able to do it. And I'm also a huge Kevin Smith fan, the movie, the director. And he had this podcast, and he was talking the one day about that, and he was saying something along the lines of, I've got the quote in the back of my book because I quoted him in there because it was key to what I wanted to do. And he was basically like, he said, like, his films are never going to be billion-dollar blockbusters. He knows that, but he doesn't care because it's all about chasing his own whimsy. It's like writing the stories that he wants to write and telling the tales that he wants to tell. And nobody else can do that. He said, only you can tell the story that you want to tell. Nobody else can do that. It's just you. And that became like my touchstone. It was like, okay, so yeah, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to tell my story the way I want to tell it. And then whether anybody buys it or not is fine. It is almost irrelevant, I guess, to a point. It's just, can I do it and can I get the book out there? Because this is something I want to leave behind after me when I go. It's like knowing that that book is now out there and will always be out there, even when I pass on. It feels like almost like a legacy thing. It's like I've now made, even if it's a little tiny imprint on the world, it's now I've made that imprint. You know, that book will always be out there, even if only 100 people ever read it. It's at least 100 people have read it, and it will sit on a bookshelf somewhere. It will sit in the Amazon library somewhere, and other people, you know, years after I'm dead and buried, might pick it up and read it. And that's kind of what I was looking for. And that kind of is the idea that sparks joy in me, I guess. The fact that the books will outlive me, and that's what it was all about. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I use the word legacy a lot, and that's essentially what it's about for me. It's just leaving something behind when I'm gone that I can be proud of, and this is what it is. And I'm really proud of where Hunters is, and I think it's, you know, I did a good job on it, and hopefully I'll just get better with subsequent books. But that's what it was about. Never about the money, just more about me leaving a mark on the world somewhere that people might, you know, read. Yeah, there you go.
I love that.
It's a tough answer, but that's the truth.
That's good though. That's a good, well thought answer. Okay, so you and I are gonna go on a speed date. So I've created a candle, I've created ambience, but basically what it is 5 quick rapid questions. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, ready. Awesome. Go for it.
Here we go. What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
There's 2. One of them is really straightforward. Like, I'm the world's worst DIYer. Okay, like when it comes to doing like work around the house, I'm terrible at it. And there was a time, what was I doing? I was doing something on step ladders. I was doing something on the ceiling. I can't remember if it was painting or I can't remember if it was doing a light fitting or whatever it was. And I remember climbing up the ladders on the one side and putting the light fitting on a painting or whatever I was doing, and then stepping off the side that didn't have the rungs on it and plummeted to the floor in a heap, which caused my wife to have no end of the fits of giggles because she said it was the clumsiest thing she'd ever seen in her life, and she's right. So there's that one. But then the other one that sticks to mind is, and this might make you a bit squeamish, and I apologize if it does, but I was sitting at my desk one day, and I used to have on the wall like quite a big poster in a glass. You know those glass frames that just have clips around them, so they're glass, but they haven't got a frame that's got clips. There was one of those, and it had broken, like the bottom corner had broken off. So I'd taken it off the wall and put it on the floor. And the one day I'm sitting here, and I got my feet under the desk because it used to sit next to my desk, and I'm like running my feet around, and I used to have like one of these angular footstool things under the desk as well. And I'm running my foot up and down the footstool, and I'm like, my footstool's really slippy. What is going on down there? And I did this for about 5 or 6 minutes as I'm running my foot up and down the stool, thinking, it's really slippy down there. What have I? And I'm like round my thing back to look, and there was blood everywhere. And I was like, oh my God. And I called Jess, and I went, Jess, I said, you need to bring me a tea towel or a bandage or something, because I've cut myself. And what I'd done was I'd sliced the end of my toe open on the bottom of the picture frame where the glass had gone, and literally sliced right across the front of my big toe, and there was blood everywhere. And I've been merrily just smearing my own blood around the footstool for about 5 or 10 minutes, just like la la la. So that was what Jess said, how can you have not noticed you've like seriously cut your toe on this piece of glass? And I was like, just never noticed. It's just one of those things. So that's probably my 2 stupidest, clumsiest moments, like stepping off step ladders the wrong way and slicing my toe and not noticing it. But there you go. Sorry if that was squeamish, but
it's fine, but I'm just, because I'm quite a visual person as well, so I'm just like, I know. What are the 3 words that would best describe you as?
I'm very laid back. I know it's 2 words, but can we put them together as one word, I guess? I'm very laid back, very placid in that sense. I don't tend to I'm not prone to extremes of emotion. I don't get really angry, but then neither would I get overexcited, if that makes sense. So I tend to be like pretty much one level most times. Very laid back. Jess would say I'm too laid back sometimes, but hey. Self-deprecating usually, I guess. I know that's again 2 words, but I'm forming them as one. I tend to self-deprecate quite a lot. I tend to put I've never been confident enough to think I'm the be all and end all of everything. It's like usually there's for me, like my default mode is there's room to improve in everything that I do. It's like I'm never the best at anything, but that's that. I don't know what else. I try and be funny, I guess, most of the time. Succeed sometimes, other times I don't. But I don't know what other words to use really. I try and be kind. I try and be like, I'm a firm believer in karma. Like what goes around comes around. I think if I put out positive energy and put out like positive vibes and positive things, then they'll come back to me. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's the way I feel. But those are probably the words I probably mostly use to describe me. Amazing. I guess. I'm not sure what else I'd use.
Yeah. Well,
do you?
What song best describe you?
Oh God.
Or you can go, who's your what band perhaps?
What, sorry?
What band perhaps, or artist? Is there a particular favourite of yours?
I'm a huge fan of the Bare Naked Ladies. Have been for years. I was trying to think while I was thinking about when you just asked me the question, I was trying to think, is there a Bare Naked Ladies track that I relate to or that I can use as my my touchstone, but I can't think of one on the top of my head. But the Bare Naked Ladies have been my favourite band for a long time now. I spent some time in Canada years back, and that's where I discovered them because they're a Canadian band, and I've loved them ever since. I've seen them in concert a bunch of times, listened to their music all the time. So that, yeah, it would be a song by them, but I'm trying to think what song it might be. I can't think of one on the top of my head. Sorry, I'm going to blank on this one. I can't think of a proper song. But they're my favourite band. It would be something like by them. They're quite easy listening. Their songs are quite funny, so that can be suited down to the ground. But I can't think of a song title off the top of my head. Sorry.
That's all right. The band will do. I will accept the band as the answer.
Okay, good.
What is your life motto?
It's like we were talking a minute ago, the Kevin Smith thing. I've even put it in the back of my book, and it's the chase your whimsy line. It's like because I think that's what really has become a touchstone for a long time. It's like, especially on the book stuff, it's like if you want to do something or there's something you want to do, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, as long as you're not, then just chase it. Just see if you can do it. There's nothing wrong. You're not gonna, you can't fail if you just chase what you want to do and try and push it through. And that's because that's what I've done with the book thing. It's just I had this feeling that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to see if I could write a book. I wanted to see if I could publish a book, and that's what I did. And I'm a firm believer in that. It's like anybody out there who wants to do something, just try it. What's the worst that can happen? It's like maybe you can't do it. Maybe that's the joy of it is in trying to do it, and then and when you succeed, you get this sense of accomplishment by it. Well, the first day that I had the Hunter's book in my hand, when the proof copy arrived and you got it in your hand, and you're like, I can't believe this is my book. And it's an idea made form now, and it's here, and I'm holding it. It's not just words on a screen anymore or in my head. It's actually something I can hold, and it's the most amazing feeling when you get that for the first time. I've got a friend, Steve, who's going through that at the moment. Like when he read my book, and he was like, I can't believe you were talking about this book for years, and now it's here. I was like, you can do, and he'd been talking about writing a book himself for a long time, and I was like, you can do it, Steve. It's not difficult to do it. It's just you've got to persevere, and you've got to push yourself to a point and just believe you can do it. Chase that whimsy, chase that dream. If that's what you want to do, then do it. There's nothing to stop you. I've proved it can be done. And on my website, I try and put step by step how I did it, how I got to that point, and anybody can do it. It's just chase that dream, chase that whimsy. And that's a Kevin Smith quote. It's not a me thing. It's just, but that's probably the what do you call it? The motto which I've taken to heart the most is just, chase those dreams. If that's what you feel you want to do it, and you're not hurting anybody else to do it, then just do it. Just try it. It's the worst that can happen.
What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not many people know about?
I have, I don't know if not many people know about it, but I have like an almost encyclopedic knowledge of movie trivia. Like one of my biggest hobbies is collecting movies. I'm a huge movie watcher. I've got thousands. Like we've got a den, what we call the den downstairs. It's like used to be a second sitting room, I guess, but we turned it into a library. So it's just shelved from floor to ceiling all the way around. It's got a TV in there and a sofa, but everything else is shelves, literally from floor to ceiling. And we've got comic books, DVDs, books, but there's thousands of DVDs in there because I'm a compulsive movie watcher and movie buyer. And like, I've never really caught up to the streaming. I mean, I do stream a bit, but I'm kind of old school. I like to have the discs on a shelf where I can browse them and go and have a look and see what I want to watch. So I watch a lot of movies, and I watch them over and over again. So whenever we go to like pub quizzes, or we did a lot of like lockdown quizzes when lockdown first happened over here, like we were doing quiz, like these online quizzes. And whenever it comes a movie round, I ace those rounds like you wouldn't believe. It's great. My movie trivia is pretty good, but and I like dating, but I watch anything. But that's probably my one talent is movie trivia.
So what is coming up for you? Where do we find you? Where do we stalk you? What do we need to know?
Okay, so I have my, you can ask me for the addresses. I've got my Twitter, obviously, which is, I think, @_Nightingale_. I think if I remember right, which is a weird one, but it is. And Nightingale has a K. Weirdly, there's a story behind that, which I can tangent off to. When I created a character for the original, because Nightingale was a character I had in the original City of Heroes game. And originally when I created the City of Heroes game, is you create a character which is like a superhero. And originally I created like a male character, and it was like in a suit of armor. It was like a suit of armor with a shield and the works. And I wanted to call it the White Knight. So that's where it came from. But the name White Knight was taken, which I was gutted by, because it won't let you have that name if it's taken. I was like, oh no. So then I started to sit there and I was thinking, well, I need a name that's like White Knight, but and reflects the fact that it was what they call a defender character, which heals other characters. So I was like, what am I going to create? So then I was Googling and came up with, I started typing Night in, but I spelt it wrong, weirdly, and ended up with Nightingale, you know, Florence Nightingale. I thought, oh, Florence Nightingale, that kind of works. If I put a K on it, it'll be Nightingale, but with Night at the start, like White Knight was. But then I thought I need to change the character. The character changed from being male to female. They became a female character in the game and became the character Nightingale. And that just happened to be the character I played the most, and I became known in the game as Nightingale. It became my, what they call, a global handle. And that's the name that has carried on into the new books and into my social media accounts, and everything was Nightingale. So that's where that comes from. But yeah, so it's a kind of a weird Twitter name, but @_Nightingale with a K _. That's my Twitter. I have an Instagram account, which is Jon Ford Author, which is run by my wife. So if you're talking to me on there, you're probably talking to Jess, not me. But I do chip in from time to time. And then I have my website, which is www.jonfordauthor.com. Which I try and update as regularly as I can. I've been a bit slack over the past month or so, but generally speaking, I try and update it once a week with like either news or author interviews, like we were talking about earlier, like the deep dives. I've started to do like a funny series of gaming articles on there, because I played Grand Theft Auto. And the Grand Theft Auto game online, it amuses me because there's so many weird things in there that I just think are just weird. Like the first one was on what it costs to own a car in that game. Like the car insurance costs must be through the roof because of how many cars get destroyed. And then the second one was like, because in that game you sort of, obviously there's a lot of illegal practices that you do in that game. You like manufacturing all kinds of illegal substances, and who buys them all? Because there's so much of it. So I've done a couple of those. So I try and update the website frequently. So those are the places you can find me. As for what's coming up, Hunters is out now, so you can go and buy that. And if you go and buy it now and read that now, available on Amazon, you'll get to the end just in time for the sequel to come out, or the book 2 in the series to come out. That'll be out, we're hoping for the end of September, but it might be early October. It was supposed to be out earlier, but we've had some, obviously I've been ill the past couple of weeks with kidney stones, which has not been great. So they pushed everything back by a few weeks. So we're probably looking at like late September, first week in October. I'm hoping to have Blood to Earth, which is the sequel to Hunters, come out. And then while that's been going through its edit phase, I've also been writing a superhero related book that's kind of a bit based on that City of Heroes game back from the day, but it's set in my own superhero universe. And we're calling that the Femme Fatales, which is basically if they're a female superhero group. So that should be out by Christmas, I'm hoping. So I'm currently going through the process. I've been talking to my cover art artist, Marlene. She's really keen to do the art for me for it. So yeah, it's been really good. And then, as I say, then hopefully by March next year, I'll have book 3 of the Hunter series, the Songbird saga out as well. So there's a lot coming down the pipeline at the minute. It should all start snowballing soon. So yeah, exciting times.
That's so exciting. Well, we'll have to make sure I'll pop some of the links down below so everyone can find you, and definitely grab a copy of Hunters. But thank you so much for coming on today. I've had a blast.
No, thank you for having me. It's been brilliant. I've loved it. It's been great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we will have to keep in touch.
Oh, absolutely. We definitely will. Because I need you. Once I've read your book, which I've now got, I think I've got it sitting next to me.
Oh my gosh, that's so scary.
Yeah, he arrived the other day. So I've got Token Huntress by Carrington-Russell, and I will read that, and then we will do an indie deep dive where I dive into the book and you can tell me how you wrote it. It's going to be great. Cool. And then you'll be on my website. So yeah, we'll keep in touch and we'll definitely do that.
Amazing. Right. Well, I'm going to love you and leave you, and we'll talk soon. Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. Thank you very much. Bye.